righty. Well, welcome everyone to another evening of awesome education, esoteric, hermetic, Masonic, you take your pick, on Refracted Light. Tonight we have the very special honor and privilege of having a brother here who's going to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart, something that a lot of continental or North American Freemasons don't have a lot of exposure to, except in very small circles. And that is the Chamber of Reflection. So tonight we have Brother Francisco Juarez, who's going to give us a fantastic presentation on that. A little bio on Brother Francisco. He is a Master Mason. He was initiated in 2001 in Nogales, Mexico. And he's also a Master Mason and a 32nd Degree Scottish Rite Mason in the state and jurisdiction of Arizona. Brother Francisco and I have been talking about this presentation for quite a few weeks now. And again, for those that are not accustomed to the Chamber of Reflection or know much about it, Brother Francisco is going to give us a fantastic presentation on the subject. So without further ado, Brother Francisco.
Joe, well, thank you so much, everyone. It's such an honor for me to be here, in Refracted Light. I will start sharing my screen so that we can start the presentation. Okay, so the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite is a Masonic rite that it's derived from the Scottish system that was practiced in France, mainly in lodges in Paris and in Bordeaux in the mid-18th century. At the present, the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite continues to work in the world with 33 Masonic degrees with some variations in the names of the same. This is based in according to the jurisdictions. It works in a ritual way through drama of very old symbols, where the great laws that govern the universe are represented. In addition to the strict ritual work, emphasis is placed on intellectual work. This is a very important aspect of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. At the lodges, particularly in Mexico, we present works or plates, that's what we call them, and we read these on ceremonies that we called tenidas. Those are treated and discussed orally by all of the brothers that are present. At the beginning of the rite of initiation to the degree of apprentice, the candidate is introduced into a dark room that it's called the Chamber of Reflection, in which he meets for the first time with various symbolic objects that in the course of the transmutation process, they will become more and more important to him, of course, symbolically speaking, and romantically speaking. In accordance with all initiatory ways, the skull, basically the symbol of death, alludes directly to the necessary separation between the profane and the sacred world. So basically the chamber or cabinet of reflection in the lodge, at least where I was initiated, it was a small cave that was completely separated from the lodge itself. And when I was initiated, I was received by what it's called the Brother Preparer. And he then took me into a different room where he placed a hoodwink right on my eyes, and from there he took me after some time to the of reflection. Now, this is precisely what we symbolize by stripping metals. At that time, they would take out any kind of metals that you might have and dress you up differently, right? This is to indicate basically that the work is no longer on the outside realm, you might say, right? The profane world. The work now starts to be within. And this is a very important topic to understand, because it's basically alluding and stating that there's nothing, right, on the outside world that can help us now. So it is a scary moment, but at the same time, there is no mocking, of the candidate. It's a moment where it's a very solemn moment, you might say. In my personal experience, I was really scared, not knowing what was going to happen next. Now, little did I know that the brother preparer in the Scottish Rite represents death. So that death had came, right, and abruptly it took me from life itself. Okay, so moving on, the symbols. Symbols are signs with an effective charge that can relate to both the conscious and the unconscious of the subject who contemplates or reproduces them. Initiatic death represents basically a period of darkness. It's a silent maturity of our own soul. Now, this is accomplished through meditation and concentration on oneself, which basically prepares the true, effective, and conscious progress that will later become manifest in light. So what it's saying to us symbolically is that there are processes or mechanisms that are internal that will help us manifest or co-create light. Now, light is in the Scottish Rite basically represents a duty that we have with humanity. So darkness is a symbol of limitation, and the light means for the eternal traveler, the liberation of those limitations. So right before you go into the chamber of reflection, the brother preparer will give you a candle, and that light will serve you as a guide through, in my case, a tunnel that brought me to the chamber. In my case, there was a cave. So that was to signify that life is not an end, okay? We do not live for the sake of living, but in view of fulfilling a duty. So there in the chamber of reflection, in complete solitude, in the candidate left to himself, he must shed all these multiple egos, right? Or masks that he has. In basically those egos and those masks are what we call the all man's personality. This will allow him within the chamber of reflection to regain his identity with authenticity. And this will, of course, translate to him becoming a new man. So yes, we are dying to our falsehood, we are dying to our ego, but we are becoming at that point, you know, something new, something different, something something better, right? A better man. But at the same time, we have all these tools, we have all these symbols that have a deeper meanings within that will help us through our journey, right, of duty with humanity and in life. So as you can see, we have here a human skull, and the human skull symbolizes basically the equality that nature holds for all living beings. And all of these symbols are inside, okay, of the chamber of reflection. So the skull shall be inspiring the neophyte to reflect on the need to act in accordance with principles and values of solidarity with those that are most in need, tolerance and respect for those who do not agree with his ideas or concept, and of justice and truth to all his fellow men. So the chamber of reflection is completely dark. So the color of the wall is black, and the black represents let's see, an atmosphere of gloom. But this is what's important. Basically, darkness is symbolizing the current state of consciousness of the neophyte, right? So this means that hopefully after initiation, that state will be completely changing. You can also notice the word vitriol. No? Vitriol, it's an alchemical acrostic that basically alludes to descent, ascent, which is inscribed also within the walls of the cabinet chamber of reflection. It means visitar el interior de la tierra, renovando encontraremos, dice, la piedra oculta, ¿no? Visitar el interior de la tierra y rectificando, perdón, encontraremos la piedra oculta, which is visit the interior of the earth, and rectifying you will find the hidden stone. The hidden stone has different meanings based on of course, your degree of also within degree within Freemasonry. But as René Guénon indicates in this regard, basically the rectification here is what we call straightening. That indicates that after the descent, we must begin to go with an upward movement, right? And this is very profound because we have in different philosophies and in practices, right? We have all sorts of how we manage our own energy and how it begins, right, to basically descend in an upward movement. So those are occultist themes or esoteric practices that, we also follow within the Scottish Rite, like we said prior, with meditation, visualization, et cetera, et cetera. And it all starts in the cabinet of reflection. So basically, this cabinet is also related to a cave, right? And it could even allude to a dense forest, just a place where you will experience a direct initiatory death. As you can see, also we have a candlelight, and this candlelight will be also dimly illuminated. It illuminates dimly the cabinet, and it's symbolizing basically the germ of a new birth. We also have a rooster here, and the rooster has been said to be related to the imminent, solar bird, you could say. And the rooster is always announcing the birth of a new day in the depths of the night. So in some ideologies, the rooster is also a symbol of the god Hermes, and he serves as the guide, right, who leads the initiate on his way to knowledge. So the banner, you could see a banner here that appears above the rooster, and it has the inscription Vigilancia y Perseverancia, or vigilance and perseverance. And this alludes directly to an active, now, this is very important, an active state of consciousness into being awake internally to receive spiritual or intellectual influences, right, during the initiation of the candidate within the lodge. We could also see that we have some bread, we have also some water, and just as they constitute the food of the body, clean and noble thoughts constitute the food of the spirit. So it also refers to the spirit of sacrifice and service that the initiate must always be ready to provide, indicating that as bread mitigates material hunger, so he is willing to console, help, and serve the needy, and water, which is the essence of human life. It's quenching thirst. So water serves to provide life, right? Or to irrigate, I don't know, crops maybe for industrial production. You also have on chambers of reflections in Mexico, the presence of sulfur in salt, and these are representative of the alchemical principles. And sulfur corresponds to the energy basically that starts from the center of the being, and it's expansive. So it's basically representing internal energy. And salt is a principle of crystallization, and it represents stability. So the implicit message is that in order to reach the self, or stable part of the being, the individual must isolate himself from external forces, from environmental influences, or basic biological appetites. And within meditation, and I know we've talked about all of this before, these basic biological appetites, they're also constrained with our aprons, right? So Mercury also symbolizes any material or sensory influence that comes from external environment. So it's trying to penetrate the internal being of man. If you also notice, we have an hourglass here, and it represents the inexorable flow of time and the short duration of the physical body's life, as well as the need that we have to use this brief flash of our material existence to build our inner temple. And this is very important, and this is something that I am so glad that we do here on refracted light. We're not wasting our time. So for us, when it's time to part to a different existence with the great architect of the universe, we know that we have devoted, our time productively, building our inner temple, fighting against our passions, and basically doing as many good works and services to others as possible. But the hourglass also indicates the return to the origin. The empty and the full, the lower and the higher, heaven and earth, and what is above and what is below. What is the purpose? What is the, based on what the Scottish Rite, in Mexico is teaching us, what is the goal? So basically the chamber of reflection or death is considered a step, right? So we're going to be changing a state, and it seems as similar to what it's birth and resurrection. So initiatory death is not an allegorical death. It's basically a real death, because when the old man dies, the conditioning, the limitations and prejudices of the ordinary being die with him. So he's no longer a slave to the future, in the possibilities of recovering, consciousness of eternity, in true liberation are born. So what are we learning, right? To solve philosophical doubt. That's one of the purposes of why we are within the chamber of reflection. In the spirit of the initiate, we have to have him touch the slavery in which he has lived with his finger, awakening in his heart the feeling of his own dignity and urging him to study the truth. Okay, this is very, very important. He has to study. It's not about just gaining, or going through the chamber of reflections, right? He has to devote himself to study the truth and free himself from all worries. So the purpose is to make the initiate know well the intellectual faculties and morals with which he is endowed, and the best and most adequate means to use them properly, both from the intellectual point of view and from the physical sight. Study of life and death, that intelligence alone constitutes and distinguishes man, and to preserve all his integrity must be resisted always, in all circumstances and with all might, the deadly attacks from the enemies of progress, which are ignorance, hypocrisy, and ambition. And this is a very important subject, because he is encountered for the first time with his own ignorance when he is inside that chamber of reflection. He really doesn't know the candidate, why he's there. He might be scared, right? And in some instances, it's only ambition, what it's driving the candidates to Freemasonry. And we, at that point, have to let him know that there is no material gain here, in Masonry. And that's part of the stripping of the metals that we spoke to prior. I'm going to go ahead and play this video that will explain a little bit further what I am, the ideas that I'm trying to convey. Okay, so if the grain of wheat does not fall to the ground and die, it would be left alone. But if it dies, it will bear much fruit. So the candidate, there in complete solitude, in left to himself, he must shed, like we said prior, those multiple egos in masks. So the chamber of reflection basically has the purpose of bringing forth a new man, but the place of action, right, of this new man, it's outside the lodge. Okay. And another teaching that he is faced with is the fact of increasing the quality, right, of oneself, increasing the quality of the brothers of the fraternity, not the quantity. And he learns that the fight will never end until our physical capabilities allow it or let us occupy our column in the eternal east. So when we are going into that chamber, we are descending basically into hell, right? In common to all traditional cosmogony, my apologies, I know that my English is not that well, cosmogonia. Similar to what Dante, right, is describing in his way in the Divine Comedy. So the candidate through this descent, knows, hell, el inframundo, no, the densest and lower states of himself. But here he must purify itself in order to subsequently ascend towards its subtle in higher states. Therefore, the initiate, when he leaves that chamber of reflection, will now be called a neophyte, which means basically a new plant. And that seed is representing the potential. It has died, but it is giving rise to new possibilities, right? This is similar to what the alchemists mention when they'll say, when I rise from the dead, I kill the death that kills me. So the whole purpose is that through intellectual and moral development, human beings or Masons completely change, right? And this will be conducted in lodge. This change will be conducted in lodge, and then it will become a creative light, right? And he will find within those processes of how to co-create his own reality, which is, true light for us. So the initiatory journey is basically analogous to post-mortem, journeys that the soul undertakes when the physical body dies, right? And this is similar to when Hermes, and we spoke about it before, is leading us, to the world of the gods, right? So in this sense, basically, the cabinet of reflection is the return to the womb, right, of Mother Earth. And the candidate for initiation is situated before his biological birth in this cosmic night, in order to participate in a second birth. Or as maybe Paracelso once affirmed, right? Whoever wants to enter the kingdom of heaven must first enter with his body in his mother, and there die, it says. So all of this is basically effective symbolism that refers to initiatory death. The black that is blacker than the black, right? According to the alchemists, That is to say, by a state of complete darkness or concentration that it's necessary, okay, for the purification of the psyche, which in turn constitutes that catharsis, no, in the proper sense of term. So the chamber of reflection is representing initiatory birth or the second birth. In Masonry, there's some brothers that I've heard this passage called from darkness to light, or in cosmogonic processes, we also call it from chaos to order. So it is absurd and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should give thanks to those that have lived. So the candidate descending into hell proceeds to reincarnation. That's his reunion with a new life. And these are going to be the first reflections, right, that he will have prior to seeing the light. Duties of man, maybe towards God, towards his fellow man, and towards to himself, right? And he starts to turn his eyes to the great architect of the universe. This is the new life that he will start after going through all this process, right? It's basically, all of it is calling us to improve. You know, since we've had now the opportunity to be born again. So we now have the virtue of learning, right, to observe and in deciphering, right, the symbols that life is now giving us. And this is very important because, you know, we are given a new set of eyes, and now we can bring to life all these, you know, all these symbols that are tools that serve as guides for us, you know, during our duties in life. So as a conclusion, man starts to have consciousness regarding his being when he basically understands he himself is a symbol of his own darkness. He seeks the light. He travels from death to immortality, and from illusion to reality. After you pass the chamber of reflection, you always have to be a friend of the just. You have to be a friend of the good man. You have to be capable of being a fighter against the absurd ambition of human recognition and glories, knowing that, you know, they are ephemeral in the face of the immense greatness and justice of the eternal. On the other hand, the chamber of reflection is also a representation of the macro and microcosm, macrocosmo y microcosmo, that is of the universe of man. So it's also, you know, teaching us that as man, we also constitute my apologies, the universe. And it's also there to remind us of the state of ignorance in which we humans live before we know the fundamental principles of the Masonic order. So basically, we have to die in the chamber of reflection to our vices so that we are born again in virtue. And that is, brothers, my presentation in regards to the chamber of reflection. Joe, I'm going to pass it down to you, and I would like to apologize to everyone. I know that my English is not really good, but we're trying to practice with everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Brother Francisco, let me first tell you that there was absolutely no need for you to apologize. You did a phenomenal job, and you exceeded all my expectations. And I know I'm going to let everyone in on a little secret. Brother Francisco was a little nervous about giving this presentation. He's never given it before, but he completely blew my socks off. This was, like I said, it really exceeded my expectations, and I am truly humbled that you were able to do this for us today. Words don't do it justice. You did a phenomenal job. So, and your English was absolutely wonderful. Your Spanish was even better. So you did a great job. So with that, everybody is allowed to unmute themselves when they like. If you have any questions, for those on Facebook, if you have questions, just put them in the chat box, and yeah, knock yourselves out.
Francisco, that was absolutely brilliant. It was more than I could have hoped for, and don't sell yourself short. Your English is exceptional, much better than mine. So keep up the good work. I hope we hear some more presentations from you in the future. That was very insightful.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Matt. And when we speak of meditation within the chamber, basically through visualization is how we are co-creating. So I just wanted to, throw that out there. And what happened with me is that after the Chamber of Reflection, I encountered Samael, which is a Gnostic. And he started, guiding me through through his books, of course, through the process of creating that light, which we spoke about in the presentation.
I got a question, Brother Francisco, and I enjoyed your presentation. Your English is great. Mine's is broken anyway, so great job. But my question to you is, like, when you just mentioned Gnosticism, how close was that to towards Eastern philosophy systems? Did you notice? Was it different, or was it close to it? Because I found that as key when I got out of the Chamber Reflection and I started meditating more myself. So what is your take on that?
Well, there are some differences that I've seen between Eastern and Western philosophies, and most of the Eastern philosophies they tend to go within the human being. In Western philosophies, they tend to go without. So in regards to Gnosticism and Samael, I found that it's closer to Eastern philosophies because he is, to be honest with you, he's tapping into some things that I might not understand clearly, right? But I know that they work because I've co-created a lot of stuff in my life through visualization, in getting sidetracked a little bit. I know that also the alpha sound of the Silva method works a lot for putting you in a state where you're ready to become who you would like to become. So that's one of the differences that I sometimes see between Western philosophies and the Eastern philosophies, that the Eastern philosophies go more inward. I don't know if that answered the question, Michael. I'm still learning. I'm still in that process. Yeah.
Brother Francisco, thank you for a marvelous presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. My question is, the Chamber of Reflection, it's becoming a lot more popular in New York, in the Grand Lodge of New York. A lot of people are researching on it. We're doing a whole thing on it, where lodges are going to start presenting the pictures and maybe even lectures of their Chamber of Reflections. As far as, in your opinion, how much does the candidate when you went through, how much instruction, is there a lecture behind it, or is it just a room with all the accoutrements and then you're left to reflect on it, or is there someone giving you a long lecture?
Thank you so much, Michael. That's a really good question. Prior to entering the chamber of reflection, the brother preparer, which represents death, is basically guiding you. And most of the time, they're what we call experts. So these are brothers that have been within the fraternity for long periods of time and years. And yes, they will be letting you know, giving you a little bit of insight. Okay, now you're going to go, inside this chamber of reflection. When you go within, there's also something that I did not mention in the presentation. There's a piece of paper. It's called, Joe, what's the proper word in English? We call it triangular. It's like a piece of paper in a triangle-shaped form that it serves as your testament. And the brother preparer will tell you to focus on your testament and to read all the signs that you see that are, next to you. In my case, they actually had a coffin with bones and skulls inside. And I was told that when I would see those bones and those skulls, that they were representative of me. So that was 21 years ago. And now that I am remembering it, I mean, my brother has already passed to the, we say, Eterno Oriente, no, to the Eternal Orient. And he was the one that brought me to light. So when you see that skull, and those bones, it knows that it's you. And then when he pulled me out, he said, keep in mind, and now you're a new man, he said. And I can't speak of other things of the degree, but in Mexico, at one point, they will clean your hands. I don't know if you have heard of those things, but it's really refreshing, because some of us, we carry, with some guilt because of some things that we might have done in the past due to our own ignorance. And right there and there, they're giving you the opportunity. When you see all these elements, so you understand, your own mortality. And when you come out, you understand that your duty now is to become immortal, helping humanity become a better place. Thank you, Michael. And New York is beautiful, Michael. Enjoy.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Brother Francisco, first of all, fantastic presentation, very informative, very well put together, and very well presented. Question for you, outside of the chamber reflection, how much does, let's say, the symbolism of skulls play into the degrees in Mexico? The reason why I ask that is the majority of degrees in the US, you don't see it. Degrees in other places, such as in Canada, England, Scotland, and the third degree, you will definitely see what's commonly referred to as the bone box, which is the skull and crossbones as part of the third degree. What's it like in Mexico?
Yes, Brother Brent, you find them everywhere. Everywhere inside the lodges, on the walls. You even have one on the back of the apron. And on higher degrees, of course, of the Scottish Rite. But the skull is a it's a very profound it's a very, very profound symbol in Mexican Freemasonry. So you find it basically everywhere. I mean, there's and of course, there's degrees that have, all of them there, and we take them out and we put them in the degrees, we carry some of them. I mean, it's because of the profound symbolism, you know, that it has. I don't know if I answered your question, Brent.
Yeah, you did. Thank you very
I can't be
much.
very specific, and I know you understand, but
Yeah.
but I want you to know that in no way, shape, or form have I heard, let's take the skull out of Freemasonry. And in some other places, I have, where it becomes too scary, or, you know, but when we separate ourselves from the initiatory teaching, the secret of Freemasonry is, how do you say this, Joe? It's, you can't, inviolable por su propia naturaleza. It means that you have to experience it. Nobody will ever find that secret, because, Brent, you and I know that it's within. And you take away all these symbols that really represent something other than fear. You know, you are damaging the tradition. No, that's just my humble opinion, Mr. Caleta. Have a good day, brother.
Thank you.
You are, so I got to jump in, Brother Francisco, because I mean you're saying things that at least I think are on the minds of most people that are here, right? It's what is our purpose in going through this process and going through that experience? Are we part of an organization that just wants members, right? And just wants to get people through the door as fast as possible? Or are we part of something that is really tailoring a unique experience for each individual to find themselves, right? And the chamber of reflection, for those that were lucky enough to experience it, because most people in the United States don't experience it, right? It's a new concept here in the United States. So if you're lucky and you've traveled and you've seen it in other places, you're blessed, right? Because it's a rarity here. And even in a lot of places here in the United States, it's kind of watered down, right? You know, you don't get that full depth of experience of, you said it best. You took my breath away when you said this, when you're standing there in your own ignorance, right? A lot of people don't, even going through the process of initiation here, they don't realize that they are truly standing in their own ignorance, that you're mentally and you're spiritually bare and naked, you know, and that's really one of the most important parts of the initiatic process, right? So you're blessed that you've gotten to go through that, you know, and again, that was one of the reasons why I was really looking forward to this talk, is because most people just don't understand that. And, you know, the status quo answer for a lot of people is, oh, you know, these symbols of mortality are very scary and we want to make Freemasonry less scary. And that seems to be the prevailing opinion. And just to throw a disclaimer out before somebody sends this to my Grand Lodge, these are my opinions. And if you don't like them, tough shit. So one thing I did notice that I've seen that I think people do incorrectly, and you touched on it, I've been in chambers of reflection where there's been many candles, you know, like a bunch of candles, but you kept highlighting the fact that there is a single candle in that room. And I think that gets missed when some people try to implement the chamber reflection, that the point is there should only be a single source of light in that whole room, you know, not a bunch of lights just to make something look eerie and scary. But you did touch on that, so I appreciate that.
And one thing I missed, Joe, is the fact that the cave or the chamber also represents Earth, and what they're trying to facilitate to the initiate or the candidate is the study of nature, and that's very important, because I might say some things. I don't want to say them where I'm, you know, offending. I don't think I will in this group, because we're all like really in tune, you know, in search.
If you offend anybody, we'll kick them out. Don't worry about it.
But what happens sometimes is that we start teaching that dogma will limit you sometimes, right? Just believing per se. So you do have to go within nature to discover, you know, those processes, so that you can also get closer to science. and not just make it about this is just my personal opinion, but I've seen it, about religion. So there's a great area there where, in Mexico, there's some lodges that will, completely take that out of the equation and focus more on just loss, and they'll have different books in the altars, but that's a different. So, but the cave or the chamber basically represents earth, and once you come out, you're going to encounter other elements of nature in the initiatory rite, and from there on, it keeps it's all together so that you can understand those processes of nature, the influence of fire, water, and et cetera, et cetera.
So you just touched on something, and sorry to cut you off there, but I know we talked about this before, before the presentation. So for those that don't, I know Brother Francisco has mentioned Scottish Rite a bunch of times, but what he's referring to is Scottish craft masonry, right? Most American systems or continental masonry is, quote unquote York Rite, even though that's not really a good term for it. But what Brother Francisco is referring to is the craft degrees in the Scottish Rite system, which is a lot more metaphysical. I was lucky; I got to see a entered apprentice degree, in the Scottish craft Rite. I didn't understand a word that was going on because it was in French, but I caught bits and pieces. But it's definitely a lot different than the traditional quote unquote York Rite degrees that we have here in the States. Like you said, you go to the EA degree there and they talk about, the 4 elements and, the symbolism behind them. It's a lot of metaphysical analogies that you're getting in that one. And it's definitely a lot different. So again, for those who don't know, it is a separate craft system that does get, you do see it in some places in the States. Michael, they do that in New York, right? In Italian, right?
Yeah, the Garibaldi Lodge they call it the Garibaldi degree. It's the Scottish Rite first degree with spliced in with the New York ritual at the warden stations. But there's also a local lodge called Archimina Roma. They don't have enough Italians there, so they do that in English. So we've seen that a couple of times in my district. And when a couple of years ago, we were trying to change things up at the Scottish Rite, my valley of Rockville Central, Long Island. We actually asked Archimina Roma to do their first degree, confer it at the Scottish Rite, on a Scottish Rite night. We got dispensation, and they actually conferred it upon on six candidates, and about 130 people showed up for that degree. It was fantastic.
That's amazing. And I know those of you that live in Louisiana, there are Scottish craft lodges in the Grand, that under the Grand Lodge of Louisiana that you can visit. Michael Pohl talks about those all the time. But
Pre-Pike degrees.
Yes.
Those are pre-Pike.
Indeed. But yeah, so you can see it. DC does it once in a while. You can see it if you are a poor American like me and don't get to experience it the way that Francisco did. So it is out there. So
And also,
Brother Joe, can I make a comment?
In the more esoteric, part of things, the purpose of the initiate being in that cave is to tune those energies so that later on he could be part of the egregor, and instead of being the lodge, instead of becoming an emotional egregor, we wanted to become a more intellectual and spiritual egregor, and all the elements fall into different aspects also of magic. So after 21 years, I'm just gonna say it here, I do believe that magic does exist in Freemasonry, in the rituals. Yeah.
Amazing.
Brother Joe, can I make a comment about that?
That's just my opinion. Okay, brothers, don't.
In New York, like you said, I don't know if what jurisdiction you're in, but yeah, in some circles, esoteric is a very bad name and closes things off, and things seem to be very watered down. And it was very troubling to me at one point. And then one of my mentors, he's an active member of the Supreme Council in Northern Masonic jurisdiction, and his practical sense, but his also esoteric knowledge is off the charts. And so one time I asked him about like why don't we teach more alchemy, Kabbalah, sacred geometry, and astrology? And what he said to me was, he says that Masonry in every culture becomes what it needs to be. And so for the gross clientele, let's just say in New York, it is exactly the way it's supposed to be. It's not very esoteric until you start understanding the esoteric. Maybe you get involved with the Scottish Rite and it opens your eyes, and then you see the depth and the dimension of the first 3 degrees. But he said that there's actually an automatic protective system in that, in respect. He says, because Masonry cannot be alchemy, cannot be Kabbalah, because then it crosses the line to give a man his right, or woman in co-Masonry or wherever you are, the right to make a decision on what their own religion will be, their own altar, their own practice. And it's supposed to pique your interest. And so what happens in New York is that being that it's grossly watered down, there's a lot of esoteric Masons that are very distraught. And I tell them, take heart, brothers, because what happened to me was I started a guild of the Scottish Rite called the Magus Guild. We would meet 4 times a year, and you guessed it, on the solstice and the equinoxes, and we do a deep dive. But it's funny because Scottish Rite is supposed to be an esoteric group, so we actually got to meet separately, not to hassle everybody. And so what happened is, a couple of years ago, I started asking the heads of the body in the Scottish Rite if I could do a 2-3 minute lecture before the degree that they show me. And the response I got one time was, there's a prologue to the 14th degree. Why do you got to talk about it? I said, because you just showed them the 4th degree, and now you're going to go to the 14th degree, and the prologue is to the 14th degree, assuming they've seen the 13th degree and the one before that. Prologue is to fill in the gap a little bit, just to give them enough to pique their interest. And what we've been noticing is that my valley went skyrocketing with membership, and now we're becoming a central source of esoteric information. Not everybody's into the esoteric in our valley, but we're offering a little bit of everything. But we're doing it in a way where we don't piss off the people that are closed-minded towards esoteric. And oftentimes I'll use different words. I'll use philosophy, philosophical part of it, the spiritual dimension, self-actualization. What does it matter what words we use, right? We're supposed to inspire and transform people. And I think what happens is, in an environment where esoteric Masonry is not really kind of popular and shunned upon, what it does is it becomes a screening process for those that are interested to dive deeper and deeper and deeper. And once again, we find that only the worthy are able to cross that bridge.
No, you're absolutely right. And you know, you just saying that, you know, not to digress on this, you literally sound like my inner angel saying that, because those that know me, and there are quite a few here that know me, you know, I've definitely been one of those people that, you know, I'm very rage against the establishment. It's like, no, we need to do it this way because this is the best way, and you're all wrong and you're full of crap. But I've learned through age and experience that Michael, you're actually correct, that Masonry is exactly what it needs to be for the people that are there. And it's been a hard lesson for me to learn, right? Because I want my Masonry to be the same Masonry for everybody else. And it's not how that works. And it's taken me a long time to realize that. And sometimes I forget. But, you know, a good friend of mine who has a podcast that a lot of you listen to on Thursday nights has said it many times before that the Blue Lodge for many people is the ground floor, right? So it's that stepping stone into other paths of wisdom and knowledge and enlightenment and things like that. And I never really understood that until I stopped trying to fight the system, right? So let Masonry be what it's going to be, and it'll always have those small pockets of people who want more or people who are looking for something different. And slowly and painfully, I've gotten accustomed to that. So I guess I sound a little defeated, but I think that's called experience. So
Hey, you should hear me on my venting days. I'm from Brooklyn.
well, your accent's killing me because I grew up in New York. I don't have an accent anymore, but I grew up 2 towns away from where you are now. So yeah, it comes out after I have a beer or two. But
hey, Joe, can I leave a comment real quick? I just wanted to say thank you to Brother Francisco, for the presentation. I want to say thank you for having me be a part of tonight Zoom chat. So I mean, it's just great when you hear stuff like that, the experiences that he was able to share in full detail. For me, it's one of those things that I just listen. I'm like, I feel a little bit cheated, but to bring it back around what Brother Michael was saying, that it's great when you hear about the diversity within the craft, and you hear other people's experiences, and for me, it's one of those things that you tend to appreciate it a little bit more, because I think that's what makes this unique. The stuff that we're able to offer to each other, and just hearing about the experiences, and that's where the traveling, it's you get to meet other brothers and travel frequent, and you hear about these experiences and stuff like that, and you get a chance to just share. So I just want to say thank you for having me, and thank you, Francisco. Your English is way better than mine. I'm a little nervous right now, but I just wanted to say thank you. And Matt, keep up the great work. This platform you guys have created, Refracted Light. I'm definitely glad that I'm part of this. Thank you.
Hey, Brother Francisco.
Yes. How are you? It's good to see you, Tim.
You too. I also thought your English was perfect. It was spot on. I really appreciated some of the topics you brought up. And I liked how you brought in things from let me back up. We're taught in Masonry to study external things to enhance what we know in Masonry, liberal arts and sciences. I appreciate how you brought some of those external studies in liberally to enhance some of the things. It was very enlightening, and I very much appreciated it. I want to echo a lot of the brothers' comments before, and I just very much appreciated your presentation. It was right on time and right on topic. I loved it.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much.
very nice. Well, I'll definitely leave the Zoom running for our Facebook friends and our recordings. We are going to say goodbye. If anybody would like to stay and chat, unless you're dying to get back to the news and see who's winning right now, we will. I know Brother Francisco is a couple hours behind, so hopefully he has a few more minutes to answer questions. But with that, again, publicly, Brother Francisco, I am so happy that you came to give this presentation tonight. It was by far one of my most favorite that we've done here, and you really have touched on a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and you did it so well, and I'm so happy that you got to share that with us. So
Thank you so much, Joe. Refracted Light, everyone that it's behind, and all of you, it's always such an honor. It's such an honor to see everyone.